Our immaculate boys and girls, you are very welcome to our lesson 18. But then I want to report that we are very proud of you. And we are very sure that you're doing the right thing by answering the question that we have been uploading and also the activities. I'm very certain that when you were with Mr. Chambala, you had an activity. Therefore, I want us to start by looking at the activity that we had and the possible responses. Our question 1 is, name any 2 trading companies that operated in Africa. Our first question is, name any 2 trading companies that operated in Africa. I am very sure beyond doubt that you guys passed that. One of them we had IBEACO, or rather Imperial British East Africa Company. I'm sure Karen you passed that. Imperial British East Africa Company. And then the other one, you can talk about GICO, or rather German East Africa Company. These 2 companies operated in East Africa. Like the IBEACO operated in Uganda and Kenya, and then the GICO operated in Tanzania. The other trading company, boys and girls, we had British South Africa Company. British South Africa Company. Then lastly, actually this British South Africa Company operated in 3 countries. That's in South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. The very last trade company, boys and girls, we had the Royal Niger Company that operated in Nigeria and the entire West Africa. I'm sure you looked at that with Teacher Mbala and you have passed that, I'm very sure. Question 2 says, write the following in their full form. One is IBEACO. Of course, I know you passed that. IBEACO is Imperial British East Africa Company. Then BSACO is British South Africa Company. Let's have a look at number 3. Why did Britain and Germany permit trade companies to operate in Africa long ago? Why did Britain and Germany permit trade companies to operate in Africa long ago? There are very various reasons why Germany and Britain permitted trade companies like IBEACO, GICO to operate in Africa. One of them was to get market for their home goods. To get market for their home goods. Number 2, to get raw materials for their home industries. The other one is to invest their surplus capital. And can also say to get land for new economic activities. To get land for new economic activities. Boys and girls, we also had more other reasons connected to that. For example, to promote legitimate trade. When you talk about legitimate trade, the word legitimate means fair and acceptable. Do not forget that this is the type of trade that replaces slave trade. So, trade companies were permitted to operate in Africa by Germany and Britain in order to promote legitimate trade. Then the other one is to defend their country's colonial interests in Africa. To defend their country's colonial interest in Africa. Then lastly, we had to rule colonies on behalf of their home governments. To rule colonies on behalf of their home governments. Number 4 says the diagram below shows how IBEACO related with the Church Missionary Society. Study it carefully and answer questions that follow. We are having A and then B the other side. This A is actually representing how the Church Missionary Society benefited from IBEACO. I'm sure you passed that. Our question A is, what do the following letters represent in relationship between IBEACO and the Church Missionary Society? What is the relationship therefore? Letter A represents protection. Remember, IBEACO offered protection to the Church Missionary Society. The other B, boys and girls, represents funds or money that the Church Missionary Society gave IBEACO. Do you recall when IBEACO ran bankrupt in East Africa and threatened to withdraw her activities? It is the Church Missionary Society that sponsored IBEACO so as to prolong her stay in East Africa. So we want to attribute the benefit, to attribute the work of the Church Missionary Society, the work of IBEACO to the contributions of the Church Missionary Society. Boys and girls, Our other question is, name the British official who received help from the Church Missionary Society. Who is that official that that received help from the Church Missionary Society? What do you think is the answer? That is Captain Frederick Lugard. I'm sure you passed it. The other question is, part 2 of it is, handed over or gave help to Ibeaco. We want to know the official who handed over or who gave help to Ibeaco. What do you think is the answer, boys and girls? That was Bishop Alfred Tucker. Bishop Alfred Tucker. Now, boys and girls, today we want to look at colonialists or administrators in Africa. But then I want to remind you that we are still looking at foreign influence in Africa. In the very genesis of this topic, foreign influence in Africa, we looked at so many foreign groups that came to Africa. Those from Asia and then those from Europe. From Asia, we said we had Arab traders and we looked at them. We also looked at Indian traders. Then those from Europe, we looked at the following. We looked at explorers in Africa. We looked at Christian missionaries in Africa. And then European traders. Yet today, we want to look at colonialists or administrators in Africa. This was yet another foreign group that came to Africa from Europe. Do not forget that the activities of Christian missionaries as well as European explorers gave colonialists or administrators a soft landing ground. These explorers and missionaries aided colonization of Africa. They facilitated or eased the coming of colonial administrators to Africa. Look at explorers. They wrote early reports about Africa, which were both good and bad. And these early reports attracted colonialists to the African continent. They also mapped Africa, of which map was used as a reference point by colonialists. Let's also look at Christian missionaries. Christian missionaries also contributed greatly towards the coming of colonialists to Africa. How? They preached the word of God, which softened people's hearts to accept colonialism. Now, after some time in the 18th century, we witnessed the arrival of colonial masters who had come to establish colonial influence in Africa. But then before we go any further, we want to look at important terms or vocabularies under this. These are the words that we shall be using as we walk down the path of this topic. This subtopic. The first term, boys and girls, is colonialism. What is colonialism? Looked at this in P5 and also in P6. Now, colonialism is the process by which a powerful country rules over a weaker country. Or we can also say that a process by which a powerful country rules over a weaker country. That's termed as colonialism. The other term is colonialists. A group of people that came to establish colonial rule and colonial interests in Africa were termed as colonialists. But then we can also say that the people who rule a weaker country on behalf of a powerful country. Colonialists are people who rule a weaker country on behalf of their home governments. The other vocabulary, boys and girls, we have a colony. And when you talk about a colony is just a weaker country ruled by a powerful country with the aim of permanent settlement. We are saying that a colony is a weaker country ruled by a powerful country with the aim of permanent settlement. We had so many examples of colonies in Africa. For example, we had Kenya. Kenya was colonized by the British with the aim of permanent settlement. We had Zimbabwe, we had South Africa, and to mention but a few. All those were colonies. The opposite of a colony is a protectorate. Now, a protectorate, just like a colony, is a weaker country ruled by a powerful country, but without the aim of permanent settlement. I want to repeat this. We are saying that a protectorate is a weaker country ruled by a powerful country without the aim of permanent settlement. Now in Africa, there were so many protectorates than colonies. Uganda is an example of a protectorate. During colonial era, Uganda was referred to as a protectorate, while Kenya was referred to as a colony. Why? Why was Uganda called a protectorate and Kenya a colony? Uganda was ruled or colonized without the aim of permanent settlement, whereas Kenya was ruled with the aim of permanent settlement. That's why Uganda was called a protectorate and Kenya a colony. Now, there were so many advantages that colonies had over protectorates, but one of them is colonies were more developed than protectorates. They will ask you one day that what advantages did colonies have over protectorates? We are saying colonies were more developed than protectorates. On the other hand, they can also ask you that how were protectorates? What advantages did protectorates have over colonies? And you will say that protectorates got their independence earlier than colonies. And two, we can also say that the road to independence of protectorates was peaceful, unlike the road to independence of colonies, which was through violence or force. I want to repeat that. The road to independence of protectorates was more peaceful than that of colonies. Those were the advantages protectorates had over colonies. Boys and girls, the other terms that we need to understand is or are the other one is scramble. The word scramble means to struggle for something. There was a period of time when European countries rushed for colonies in Africa. Therefore, what is scramble? Scramble, boys and girls, refers to the struggle by European countries to acquire colonies in Africa. The struggle by European countries to acquire African colonies. You can see the word rush. We can also use the word rush in our other definition. We can also say that scramble was the rush by European powers to acquire colonies in Africa. Scramble was the rush by European powers to acquire colonies in Africa. The other term, boys and girls, is partition. Now, when we talk about partition, this simply means to divide. To divide something. Now, in this case, we witnessed European powers dividing Africa amongst themselves. And therefore, what was partition, or what is partition? Partition refers to the peaceful sharing of African countries among European powers. The peaceful division, you can say, that partition was the peaceful division of African countries, African colonies, among European powers. Remember, there was a gentleman known as Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. Chancellor Otto von Bismarck was a strong German military leader who foresaw that European scramble for Africa was likely to cause a war in Europe. Therefore, he called for a meeting, of which meeting was organized in Berlin, the capital city of Germany. In this meeting, colonial powers were asked to claim for protectorates and colonies, and then to find peaceful ways of partitioning Africa. So boys and girls, it is the Berlin Conference that helped or enabled European powers to divide African colonies peacefully. The other vocabulary, boys and girls, is the term a mandate. When you talk about a mandate territory, we refer to a weaker country ruled by a powerful country on behalf of the League of Nations. We are saying that a mandate is a weaker country ruled by a powerful country on behalf of the League of Nations. Now, in 1914 marked the beginning of World War I. But then after the end of World War I in 1918, world countries sat and sort of coming up with an organization that would control world wars. And they came up with what we call the League of Nations. Now, Germany as a country was actually blamed for causing World War I. So Germany was punished. How? All her colonies were taken away from her. Or Germany was forced to surrender all her colonies. Boys and girls, these colonies were handed over to the League of Nations. But then the League of Nations entrusted the administration of these countries. For example, we had Tanzania. The League of Nations entrusted Britain with the administration of Tanzania. Remember, Tanzania was colonized by German. But later on, the League of Nations forced German to surrender Tanzania, and it was handed over to Britain as a mandate territory. The other term, boys and girls, we have trusteeship. Now, when you talk about a trusteeship, this is just a weaker country ruled by a powerful country on behalf of United Nations organization. Now, we are saying that a trusteeship is a weaker country ruled by a powerful country on behalf of United Nations organization. Now, the outbreak of World War II in 1939 was a clear indicator that the League of Nations had failed in its activities of controlling world wars in the world, or rather world wars, yes. Now, in 1945, still world countries sat and sort of coming up with an organization to replace the League of Nations. And therefore, UN was formed to replace the League of Nations because the League of Nations had failed in her activities. Therefore, all these countries which were handed over the League of Nations after World War I were therefore transferred to be managed by the United Nations organization. That's why we are saying that trusteeship is a weaker country, or trusteeships are weaker countries ruled by powerful countries on behalf of the League of Nations. On behalf of the United Nations organization. Boys and girls, we are time bound, that's why we are trying to move faster. Now, we also want to look at reasons for scramble and partition of Africa. Why did colonial powers pick interest in colonizing Africa? Why did they scramble or rush to get colonies in Africa? One, boys and girls, they wanted raw materials for their home industries. These colonial masters wanted raw materials for their home industries. Remember, this was a period of industrial revolution in Europe, whereby, when we talk about industrial revolution, this simply refers to a period in Europe where machines replaced human labor. So during industrial revolution, there was rapid growth of industries, of which industries needed raw materials to produce finished goods. And therefore, colonials came to Africa in search for raw materials for their home industries. The other point, boys and girls, the second one is they wanted market for their home goods. Yes, of course, because there were so many industries in Europe during Industrial Revolution, there were so many goods that were being produced by these industries. And therefore, these European population could not consume all the manufactured goods. Therefore, colonials came to Africa in order to look for market for their home goods. The other point, boys and girls, we can say, to invest their surplus capital, The other one is they wanted land for settlement. There was unemployed population in Europe, and therefore colonial masters came to Africa in order to get land to settle their unemployed population. The other point is to win fame and prestige. During the 18th, 19th century, the number of countries a superpower country had determined her fame, prestige, and superiority. That's why they scrambled for African territories, because the number of countries you colonized determined your superiority. The other reason, boys and girls, is to protect Christian missionaries. That was self-explanatory, and actually it is self-explanatory. Boys and girls, at this moment of time, we want to look at countries that had spheres of influence in Africa. Countries that had spheres of influence in Africa. Now, what do we mean when someone talks about spheres of influence? The word spheres of influence simply means area of control. So we want to look at countries or European countries that had spheres of influence or areas of control in Africa. One of them we had Britain. Britain as a country colonized the biggest number of African countries. Look at Uganda, Kenya, to mention but a few. The other country, we had France. France colonized the biggest number of countries in West Africa. So most West African countries during colonial era was called French colonies. The other European country that had colonies in Africa, we had German. Germany colonized countries like Tanzania, Rwanda, to mention but a few. We also had Spain. Spain also had colonies in Africa, as we shall look at in our next topic, subtopic. The other country, boys and girls, is Belgium, that colonized the country like DRC. We also had a country in the name of Portugal. Portugal colonized a country like Mozambique. And then we also had Italy. Italy, boys and girls, colonized a country in the name of Libya, and she also attempted to colonize a country known as Ethiopia in the Horn of Africa, but unfortunately she was unable because of factors that we looked at in the first term. Boys and girls, all these countries that had spheres of influence are European countries. I want to say thank you so much, boys and girls, for listening to me, but then we are going to upload this work. You'll actually download. And also we are going to upload the activity. You will attempt it and answer it correctly. We love you so much, but above all, God loves you more. Thank you.